Oh boy. Been a while since I booted up this game. So wait a minute, this looks different. Uh, Bandai didn't make Etrian Odyssey Nexus, nor did they help in publishing it.
Go! プリンセスプリキュアシュガー王国と6人のプリンセス
I seem to have misclicked. I missed when Etrian Odyssey Nexus was the only thing that showed up. Wow, everything is 1 gigabytes, and then Princess Precure being a frickin' Chad and only being 256 megabytes. It feels like it's been so long since I last played. So long, in fact. The overhaul mod that I'm using for this playthrough right now of Nexus actually got an update. Since of course I'm the type of person to check stuff like that out. So the update mainly just concerns Reima, or basically the sharpshooter. So Silent Scope now only has 1 stack. Thankfully, I never upgraded this more than once, so there's no need for Reima to do any resting. Act Quick has also been buffed. Burst Shot also technically got a buff. Rather than disabling all skills, it just disables Burst Shot specifically. And last but not least, a buff but technically not really. Sharpshooter now actually fucking works. So I thought Sharpshooter was very underwhelming. It barely did any damage. It was supposed to increase damage the more binds you did. Turns out that wasn't working. That's why Sharpshooter fucking sucked. Now it works. And now I kind of feel bad. The Sharpshooter doesn't have any levels on it. It says attack all bound enemies. I need more info on that. Is it a weapon attack or is it piercing specific, or is it just a piercing attack? And a turn, deal range stab damage to all bound enemies. Yep, it's just stab. Bullet Symphony, although I never used the skill, apparently used to not work properly as well. It actually increased the draw rate for Reima, for gunners, rather than increasing their evasion. Which, you know, that's kind of the opposite of increasing evasion. So that's pretty wacky. Anyway. We're going with this team. I'll be playing for maybe 30 minutes since I've just been itching to play this game for a while. I also want to play Animal Well, but before I play Animal Well, there's another RPG I want to play. I want to start a new game. Technically, my attention doesn't need to be too focused on completing Etrian Odyssey Nexus, since I am technically just doing 100% playthrough. I know that doesn't sound good, but it really isn't that bad. I'm playing 3 gacha games. I can play 2 RPGs and be fine. Speaking of all the entertainment I have access to right now, just a little while ago before booting up this game, I decided to browse through some listings for freaking oh shit, this is turned off now. Right, well, before we do that, boss, I suppose... Oh my god, the story's finally gonna fucking progress. That's hilarious. Dun, 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 dun. Currently, I'm at episode 3 of Kira Kira Recure. Kira Kira a la mode. The main cast is 5, and halfway through it's gonna be 6. Holy crap, it's the biggest Precure team. And so far it's not really all that interesting to me. Hold on, let me fucking... I just called it Precure Kira Kira on my titles. Good to know, I guess. Kinda sad I won't be able to listen to this song for much longer. Man, I kinda missed playing this game. You petrified the wrong person, Rema. Whatever, this works. Oh yeah? You're a healer now. You're a medic now instead of a war magus. This is strange. Refreshing and unbind is so much cheaper now. And soon enough we'll get the ability to do that in an AoE. I should start with that instead. This could just be Nocebo, but do petrified enemies take reduced damage? I'd really like to know. So, I've recently been getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm currently watching Precure Kira Kira.
なんだ
I recently watched and finished watching Endro. After Kira Kira, I do have other Precures I want to watch as well as anime on my to-watch list. Apparently, League of Legends' stupid-ass animation series is about to get its season 2 soon. So that's pretty fantastic. And that's just the anime side of things.
反応あり
I recently went through some listings and found some new manga and light novels to read through, as well as old ones on my to-read list that I completely forgot about and want to read through now. Did I mention I'm currently playing Yu-Gi-Oh! As well? I can't stress enough how fucking time-consuming it is to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Because that shit's fucking complicated. I need to attend Yu-Gi-Oh! GX's fucking school to learn anything about that game at this point. Yeah, there's still so many other Action Odyssey games for me to play, and I also downloaded a whole bunch. I'm playing Animal Well. Hey, an Ariane friend. Thank you. And then just... yeah, I've got unnecessarily quite a lot on my plate. I maxed this out. 123. Well, it would be great if you also told me how much attack and defense you gave. I'm pretty sure the numbers were changed, so let's look at over here. At attack order at level 4. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So above is the old numbers, I'm assuming. Hold on. It's still 8 levels. So, it doesn't change in level 3 and 4. Doesn't that kinda suck? Well, it increases how many turns it lasts, I suppose. But the but the TP cost increase doesn't justify that for me. So it only increases it a total of 6 times in the end, it seems. I see. At 23% in original, 110% here. Oh, okay. So, this is objectively better. since it's all targeting. Bitch. Bitch. Hot damn. Never underestimate untyped damage. And there's just so much to do. I wanted to do some writing, maybe maybe start opening programming, but man, school? School tires me out. Freeze arms. Freezing link. Ice palm. Woo! Yeehaw!
何かあるわ。
Well, even if I am tired of writing programs, I'm not tired of writing stories. I still want to do that. So continue to do that, I will. It's not a waste of time if you find it fulfilling and fun. But let's be honest here, I'm more likely going to just be spending my time playing those other games and watching and reading all of those stupid-ass anime instead. Keep trying. That's terrible, I should've just fought them. Should be Labyrinth 8 fully explored. Let's use the Ariadne thread we got. Nani o uru no ja?
毎度あり。じゃあそろそろ来ると思ってたぞ。朝までお休み。
Sleeping at midnight, what a mood. 7 hours of sleep, what a mood.
頑張れよ。探しましょう。探しましょう。お主たちか。冷やかしは許さぬぞ。鳥、何
all the story events should play out just fine. The game's surprisingly prone to sequence breaking. Not prone, immune to sequence breaking, rather.
If the Pokemon of Hisui were ready to put children in the ground, I really doubt that Aerodactyl would have the courtesy to leave remains. We have detailed accounts of how it hunted and even know that when it was revived, it killed about half a dozen scientists in the process. It's like adopting a dog that shoots half the adoption center on the way out. It also makes a high-pitched shout, and that could get the Homeowners Association on my case. That just sounds kind of annoying. On to 6, and we finally managed to escape what I would call a horrible pet. We are finally in the realm of bad pets. Leading the way is Tentacruel. So vile was a pretty bad word with vile plume, but cruel is another thing entirely. I named my dog Hatred. You can pet him, he's already served time. Tentacruel's biggest knock is honestly not the cruel part of his name. Even the Alolan Dex doesn't paint him as an especially mean Pokemon. It's the Tenta. 80 tentacles, I mean that 80 tentacles that are able to trap the opponent and poison them with sharp, stinging pains. So it's a water type that you can't swim with since everything below the surface is guaranteed to kill you. If you can stay out of the water, maybe, but it's got a killer appetite as well, since tentacruels tend to demolish the local fish population. And representing one of Kanto's 80,000 poison types is Weezing! Now, seeing Weezing anywhere other than dead last is probably a shock. Shouldn't he be down there with muck and folk like him? You know, Chernobyl with a personality? Well, thankfully, Weezing keeps all the horrible disease to himself, since despite just being 3 tumors trying their best, Weezing doesn't actually give off any poisonous gas outside of battle. It mixes poisonous gas inside of itself, but when it's off the clock, no need. Then what are these, you ask? Simple. Stink lines. Weezing feasts on bad odors in your house like garbage and toxic waste. We all experiment from time to time. What does it do with all that stinky scent? Make it worse. Sure, you
yeah, paralyzed to get the Uneaten drop for a world buffer, right?
Just how bad this thing smells. Oh, what's that? Oh, that's priming. Why isn't he moving? Oh, because he got so angry when I forgot to feed him, he f***ing died.
Yeah,
The final
fucking
Pokemon
hell.
to get a 6 is Zapdos. This Pokemon usually likes to roost in abandoned electrical plants, but mostly makes its home in storm clouds. At best, you have a pet that's going to visit you when a storm rolls in. Already bad, but the mere act of ruffling its feathers gives off an intense electric charge, and the dex is incredibly specific to say that the thunderstorms it creates are savage. That doesn't mean anything. What does a savage thunderbolt? Savage is made up of 2 Pokemon, and they're 2 from one of the worst types for pet ownership. It's a creature double feature on fire types. With the exact same grade, Ninetales and Rapidash are the definition of interchangeable. Rapidash, you have a gigantic horse whose body is covered in exposed flames. With Ninetales, you have a majestic fox with a talent for cursing entire bloodlines. Rapidash enjoys wide open areas where it can run at top speed. Ninetales is described as incredibly resistant. If you gain a Rapidash's trust, it will let you touch the flames without burning yourself. Ninetales will turn you into a Pokemon if you pull on one of its tails. I went into writing this thinking that Ninetales was good, but should be down with the vibes and force. It's way worse than I remember. 8 is the first real big category, and it's where our first starter falls. No prizes for guessing it's Charizard. It's the default answer to what Pokemon you would want as a pet. Charizard has it all! 2 Mega Evolutions, which we're not counting since they're tantamount to animal cruelty, a Gigantamax, half its health missing due to injury hazards, the whole kit and caboodle! However, when it comes to actually having it as a pet, oh boy, it's a bad one. First things first, you can't keep any flammable objects near the ground since that swinging tail will light everything it touches up like a Christmas tree. You just tie a lighter to your poodle's tail and hope for the best. But that's all without the hard truth of Charizards. Most of them are teens. Charizard is a Pokemon predisposed to violence, and no amount of domestication is going to make it not rip your arms off when you don't give it food. It may hurt to hear, but Charizard is just such a bad pet. From one Gen 1 classic to another, Nidoking is pretty interesting as far as Pokemon go. What with Nidoran male and female being distinctive Pokemon and not just gender swaps like Meowstic, it's somehow morphing into a special attacking wall breaker in yyyy thanks to sheer force working with Life Orb in a way that makes no sense, and it being almost impossible to pin down what it's based on. I want to say Rhino, but kinda...
Did Game Facts change the way they make things look? This looks awful.
Nidoking is the first example of a Pokemon who has a pretty basic way to counteract its major flaws. Poison typing doesn't play in as much as you'd think since it's all centralized in its horn, but a lot of the Pokedex entries choose to focus on its massive strength. Speaking of it in that classic Pokedex way of incredibly specific comparisons. Did you know that Nidoking can destroy a telephone pole like it was a matchstick? The Dex really wants you to know this and mentions it like 5 times. It also frequently mentions how Nidoking's rampages are unstoppable, and you may be thinking, oh man, gotta put down Nidoking, he's gone nuts? Well, put down that shotgun, Junior, as you can fix all of these problems with one simple solution. Get a Nidoqueen. Pokemon Sword
I got the fucking key to open previously unopenable doors. I'm pretty sure I already did it. I don't remember.
Nidoqueen is Nidoking's better half, and while it's got a lot of issues of its own, you may notice its score is much higher than Nidoking's. This is mainly down to it just being Nidoking, but it's not going to try and fist fight you. So if you're going to adopt the Nidoking, make sure you get a Nidoqueen to go along with it. But they're
And I
also
do
not
mean a
small
game.
Pokemon,
It's like
so
the
it's gonna
5th
be like
time we've killed you now.
Speaking of upsettingly sized Pokemon, Machamp is just... Okay, you just adopted a bodybuilder. The pet and owner dynamic gets really messed up when your dog can pick you up. So what are
It's
the
weak to
pros of getting
fire?
right? Well, any home invader is going to piss themselves when they see a 280-pound mountain of muscle barreling towards them at Mach 5. It's also proved that these Pokemon can be extremely helpful since they're used by moving companies to unload cargo. You can get Machamp to move your couch without ever getting off of it. So what's the downside? Your dog wants to practice wrestling holds on you. You have to be freakishly athletic to keep up with Machamp's insane regiment, and maybe that's exactly what you need. Want to get into shape, and a Machamp seems perfect. Except that's like wanting to get into a yoga class and then going to an MMA training camp. Machamp is the deep end of sports exercising, so make sure you can already push the plate in your Fortress of Swolitude before you take on this cheating. Victory Bell seems like a decent pet up until the first time he tries to put you in his mouth and you see the bones and acid inside. Sure, it's going to take care of pest control, but it doesn't really know the difference between pests and my neighbor Clark, and he plows my driveway when it snows, and I really appreciate that. Barrel is a dog with baggage. You're adopting a dog out of the pet situation, which is really noble. but it's like an entire dog breed was born into bad situations. Depending on your emotional sensitivity, you might be able to take on all that Marowak's carrying, but that's a lot. It carries around its mother's skeleton for offense and defense. It has an emotional support corps. I've met people who collect animal bones, and trust me, they seem like the exact type of psychopath who can handle Marowak just fine. After him is Kabutops, another fossil Pokemon like Aerodactyl, which means there's a level of ferocity you need to account for. Doubly so, since whereas Aerodactyl at least had to open its mouth to start doing damage, Kabutops is always at the ready to gut you with the 2 health hazards it calls hands. You're gonna need some specialized housing to accommodate it, but as far as prehistoric pets go, Kabutops somehow ends up on the more docile side. It's ruthless while hunting, meaning it's probably gonna decolate a wild fox or two, but when it's not in combat, it doesn't seem to have much issue. Find a place for it to hunt and swim, and you have a pet approaching decency. The Nuts are next, and they start off with Scyther. Giant cleavers for hands, eyes of a murder machine, and it can fly. How did this thing edge out Kabutops? Simple, really. There's evidence of Scyther being a halfway decent pet thanks to the Pokédex. Ultramoon takes a break from talking about how Golem likes to suffocate the elderly to talk about how Scyther is an incredibly popular Pokemon in Alola. So if you play your cards right to report an Alolan Scyther, you might just be able to get one that isn't going to make you look like a Prince of the North Star baby. Now, seeing as Alola is the Pokemon equivalent of a lawless wasteland, considering how their Pokédex is written, take that with a grain of salt. We're still not in the Pokemon that make even all-right pets. Jolteon comes next, and when it comes to evolutions, there's the good one, the bad one, and then there's Jolteon. Middle child syndrome hits Jolteon like a truck. It is remarkably unremarkable. It's practically the middle of the pack in all regards. Mid-tier evolution, mid-tier for electric types in terms of safety. Jolteon represents the shift between Pokemon as pets being, yeah, okay, if you're insane, to, yeah, that's fine, I guess. Sandslash is starting off the 10s, and man, you'd think a monster made up of only edges would have something. Like, even Alola has only okay things to say about it. It sheds its spines a lot, but at the same time, you can sell those to farmers to make tilling equipment. That, and it can be kinda lazy and sleep in trees. That's adorable and not blood-curdling, so we're moving slowly but surely to good pets. Just because we're on to decent pets, however, doesn't mean the danger is over, since Golem is next. Aside from having a scary lizard face after having a lovable and kind rock face in the last 2 evolutions, the scariest part of Golem is the same thing that makes Graveler so scary in Nuzlocke. It can detonate itself like a bomb. It uses this to propel itself up mountains, but if your staircase is too steep for its stumpy little legs, there's a good chance it's going to take out a portion of the building to try to get up. All that being said, it can be a worthwhile choice of companionship for the more rural trainers. Golems are known to shed their rock skin once a year, and the discarded rock actually makes the ground a lot more nutrient-rich. So as long as you live in a single-floor house with no nearby mountains, you can stop Golem from exploding, and then you have a pretty friendly rock friend. Dodrio is like when you have to adopt multiple hamsters to keep them from getting lonely, except it's actually a horrible Cerberus hamster and they all hate each other. Typing is doing a lot to carry these 3 knuckleheads. First things first, we have conclusive proof that the Ride Online can make for good pets, as your mom in Kalos is a former Rhyhorn racer and keeps one as a pet. Now, how much of its docile nature is down to the fact that she's worked with them for a long time? Well, that's kind of up for interpretation, and the interpretation that is correct is lots. If you really want to ride on, you're gonna have to take a class or 2 to really understand the ins and outs of its personality. Nothing in the Dex is outright stated it's a murder machine, just that it's strong and is immune to lava. The combo of ground and rock typing is gonna make bath time into bedtime real fast, but other than that, you can do a lot worse than Rhino. Poliwrath is your Poliwag pal with a penchant for pounding, as its powerful punches produce pulp out of proud pugilists. While plenty of Pokemon parade around with predatory predispositions, Poliwrath pulls back on its puissant powers whenever packed near pleasant people. Though its profoundly protracted practice requires precise proficiencies as to not leave you pooped, Poliwrath perpetually provokes pleased partialities from pros. Finally, for the 10s is Magneton. Let's make one thing perfectly clear. Don't want Magneton as a pet. Well, why is that? How did you get this high on the list? Not only is it a giant walking magnet, meaning that your electronics are done for when Magneton gets close to them, but it lets out a low hum everywhere it goes that gives you earaches if you're near it for too long. What's the benefit then? Well, first off, it's stupid, so you're gonna have a lot of good footage of Magneton repeatedly walking into a wall that it can't even see with 3 eyes. That, if you're looking for a low-maintenance Pokemon, Magneton is your bird. It doesn't need food, water, or electricity like a lot of other electric types. It just kind of floats there being annoying. so it's a bird. Only 4 Pokemon scored 11 points, one of whom is the final member of the majestic bird trio. But before him is a literal rat. Have you ever felt like inviting a plague into your house? Do you hate having solid drywall? Has the scent of death ever been a welcome smell in your home? Get a Raticate! Raticates are bound to bring in more Rattatas with them, and it does its best impression of a bug type by flooding your house with rats. It's a normal type, which means you don't have to worry about any elemental shenanigans, but what you do need to worry about is the worst temper of any Pokemon thus far. This thing makes Beedrill look like a saint. Raticates are so incredibly violent that if you touch its whiskers, it will attack you, and often it can bite your hand clean off. I always wanted a hug hand. Thanks, Raticate. The only other positive it has is that if you don't take out your trash, Raticate is set on food for a few weeks. Despite everything I make being amazing, you can see that Raticate is kind of gaming the system. That normal typing and ability to eat trash are bolstering the whole angry apple part of its personality. Hey everybody, it's Doug Trio! My landlord is not going to let me have a Pokemon that is actively destroying the foundation of my house. I have a deposit to pay back, and it's not going to be worth much if the floor is covered in giant trenches, and it doesn't even have the thick, majestic mane of the Alolan version, so my reasons for loving him are limited. That being said, 3 times the head means 3 times the love, and Doug Trio is more than willing to love you back. The highest-ranking legendary bird, Articuno's just a big cave bird. Believe it or not, unlike his brothers who create thunderstorms and forest fires, Articuno just creates pleasant winter breezes. All you really gotta worry about is housing, because it's a pretty big bird, but other than that, pick yourself up an Articuno. Final 11 Pokemon is Cloyster, and you know what animal has never made a great pet? Plants. What am I supposed to do with this? Cloyster doesn't exactly fix that. His best aspect is his typing and the fact that clams are very low-maintenance pets. Now, you're not going to get close to him lest he clamps down on you and skewers you with his various horns, but hey, don't gotta take him on walks. 12 starts with Lickitung, and hey, maybe you can make it work. Normal typing, easy to house due to its small size, eats bugs for pest control, generally not a danger except, oh no, whenever it licks something it smells like garbage and you'll break out in a horrible rash. Okay, another normal typing to game the system. This isn't looking good. Electabuzz is about the furthest thing you can get from a good-looking pet, with it being a giant mustard yellow yeti with fangs, but reading over its dex entries show a different story. For years and years, Electabuzz has been blamed for power outages by attacking power plants like Electrodes and Pikachus do. But it turns out that Electabuzz's part in that has been grossly overstated, and it's in fact the failing of the power plants that causes power outages. Electabuzz itself may give you a shock when it goes for a hunt, but its real utility comes as a lightning rod. It conducts electricity amazingly, so just set it loose during a thunderstorm and it's all set. Not just that, but it can even create its own electricity by windmilling its arms around, and at that point, if you get hit, it's your own fault. Keeping the theme of big sweeties that look like Satan's razor, Pinsir is a Pokemon that, while objectively being just a worse Heracross, doesn't deserve the bad rap its horrifying face gives off. While they can be impressive, simply giving it access to a heated blanket will warm it up to you since it hates the cold. After that, you've got a pretty powerful pal with the ability to split logs and toss cars, which will really improve my ability to get to work on time. Omastar. Snorlax is just a burden in all honesty. This thing wakes up for 2 things, fighting and eating, and it only does those 2 things so it can go back to sleeping. Despite that, you're in no danger of being hurt by a creature that can barely recognize that you're there. You can probably sleep on its belly too, just don't wake it up too early or it will destroy God out of anger. Starmie is probably the worst Pokemon for people who need facial expressions to understand emotions. Are you happy, Starmie? Angry? Do you want some food? It's a lovely little starfish, meaning it's not exactly up to much, and as a pet for the owner who doesn't really care about doing anything with their pet. Although it does give off radio signals at random to an unknown source, there's a very good chance you didn't buy a new best friend, you just bought an old police radio. 13 starts off with the Hitmons Chan and Lee. Naturally, 2 Pokemon so similar are going to get similar scores, so it really just comes down to which one you like more. Both are going to run you ragged, but being more disciplined means they're going to know when enough is enough and treat you to some muscle milk after a long workout. It's a real problem, you pervs. Parasect is, well, you'd think you're adopting a sort of weird, crap-looking spider guy, but no, you're adopting the mushroom, because the mushroom calls all the shots. So you're telling me I've wasted all this money on bug food? Just give it some water and you'll probably be fine. Honestly, if it just sits there, it's kind of hard to tell whether or not you're doing a good job. And to some people, that's the best thing a pet can do. Just look out for the rotting corpse of the bug under the mushroom as it starts to decompose after a while. Psyduck is a prime example of a Pokemon that will never evolve because not a single person on Earth is going to say, oh man, I love gold duck. You're gonna keep this thing a Psyduck because it's either that or deal with a duck that can look you eye to eye. Since he's a little ducky, it's not going to be hard to house him, and it's going to take a lot less water to keep him happy compared to something like Tentacruel. The major setback for Psyduck is the fact that it's in constant activity. Psyduck may not be a hard Pokemon to care for in terms of food, but you're going to need this thing Advil with a shovel just to try to make it through the day. Arcanine just a dog. Not the most dramatic of revelations, I know, but it thankfully leads way more into the dog typing than the fire. All of its dex entries talk about how fast it is and how everybody likes it, and doesn't talk about how it burns hotter than the surface of the sun. It's still a 6-foot-tall dog, so you're in danger of being smothered to death by its love and it taking up most of any building it's in, which is bad, but it can learn extreme speed. I don't know if that does anything for you, but it can learn extreme speed. Kingler is a really weird Pokemon. You'd think with a claw like that, it'd be just like Raticate, who cheated on his exam to get as high as he did. Well, most of Kingler's dex entries just make you feel bad for it, honestly. Its massive claw can rip foes in twain with 10,000 horsepower, just like getting hit with 2 of the fastest cars in the world at once. But when out of combat, it can barely move its claw and struggles to do anything. You know those wheelchairs that give dogs who lose a leg? Yeah, just give one of those things to Kingler's claw and it will probably die for you. The last Pokemon rated 13 is Seadra, and it's kind of an odd duck, because in Gen 1, it's Horsey's final form, but even then it had massive middle stage energy. Kingdra thankfully came along and saved the line from being horrible, but that puts Seadra on the list in a very awkward position. It's kind of got nothing. The most that any dex entry has to say about this thing is that it has poisonous spikes, which doesn't really do it any favors, but it also doesn't really learn any poison-type moves, so... If anybody does end up getting a Seadra as a pet, please let me know what it's like, because it seems dreadfully boring. 14 not only has the previously mentioned Nidoqueen, but the next starter after so long, Blastoise. Appropriate for a Pokemon with artillery on its body, it can be a bit of a daunting pet. At 5 foot, he's in between Venusaur and Charizard, and that basically means size-wise, it's going to be another person living in your house. Not going to need any special accommodations, save for just making sure that your doorways are wide enough. Water as well is a pretty innocent type as far as danger goes. Don't ask where the water comes from, because you're probably just going to be happy to have a quick, easy way to cool off in the summer. More importantly, though, don't ever ask Blastoise to blast you directly, since a Blastoise noise would be like swapping out a slip and slide for a pressure washer. Also, it's not a good idea to get on Blastoise's bad side, since one of the most common words in its dex entries is brutal. Now, safe to say this is a situation where you really need to rile up Blastoise to make him violent, but still, when it can punch holes in thick steel, caution is necessary. You can definitely do a lot worse than Blastoise, but at the same time, there are other water Pokemon without the ability to snipe you from over 100 feet away. Alakazam is one of the oddest Pokemon to consider for a pet, as out and out he's just smarter than you are. He knows everything. You're not adopting a dog, you're buying somebody to do your taxes for you. However smart you think you are, Alakazam actually is that smart. All this while discounting the fact that he also has psychic powers. If Alakazam starts to get a brain blast, it's going to give you a splitting headache. So what's the benefit of having this Pokemon? Well, if you get to be friends with it, which means it can recognize friends from foes, you get to use one of its spoons, and anything you eat with it instantly becomes delicious. Anything! All that health food that tastes like God's wrath becomes ice cream instantly, and that's going to help you keep up with Machamp, who is still trying to turn your mindset into a grind set. Although you don't have to take care of him, if he wants food, he'll just go to the store and buy some. It's far-fetched just how high Farfetch'd managed to get on this list, but when you're basically just a regular duck with a long stick, yeah, I doubt there's going to be much objection. He might hit you with the onion, but have you seen his attack stat? That's nothing to worry about. You're an embarrassment, Farfetch. Come back when you start to look cool. Seaking! Is there any more nothing Pokemon than Seaking? Like, it's really just a fish. No regional forms, no mega evolutions, no evolutions in different generations. I don't think anybody would ever say they would want Seaking as a pet. To the depths with you, you ugly fish! Lastly is Tauros. For those familiar with the metagame of Gen 1, you know that Tauros is the table. The best Pokemon in the game without a shred of argument to be made in either direction. Nobody beats Tauros. As a pet, he's alright. Like, he's only really lagging in housing and ease of care, but other than that, the normal typing is the best type to be, and he's not temperamental or dangerous. Sure, he could gore you, but when you're an idiot that taunted a bull into attacking you, at some point Darwinism kicks in and kicks you out. The actually good pets. Everything from here on out would be a good pet you can give to almost anybody and they probably wouldn't die. Who better to usher in this era than the best starter pet, Venusaur? Starter question, how big do you think Venusaur is? Honestly, maybe 3 or 4 feet if you count the plant in his height? No! 6 foot, bordering on 6'1", but this is a pet that's probably as tall, if not taller than you are, so it's not going to be a great Pokemon when it comes to comfortably fitting in most houses. On top of that, as a grass type, it's probably going to want to spend most of its time outside to be in direct sunlight. It's also a good thing to keep it outside as it's poison type. However, in this case, it's not as bad as the usual poison type, which is really, really common in Kanto for some reason. No exposed poison or constantly bellowing gas means that it's probably not going to drool a highly deadly toxin onto you when it wants to be fed. It's also a combination of pet and incense, as Venusaur gives off a sweet calming scent from its flower. On top of that, seeing as it mostly feeds on sunlight, it'll be a cinch to feed it, meaning you don't have to break the bank on Venusaur food. Despite the handicap of poison typing, Venusaur's positive traits let it slip into being a good pet. Just barely, though. Keep antidote
It's still gonna be 10 levels. Oh my god.
Poison or not.
That's gonna take forever.
It's just kind of worse Pidgeot. They're both flying normal birds, which means they got pretty much the same grade in terms of housing and typing. The only major difference is in its massive beak, which is a little less safe than Pidgeot, in the same way that a butter knife is more safe than a butterfly. You'd think that its dex entries would talk about how evil and nasty and kinda messed up it is, thanks to how much it can hold a grudge, see Pidgeot, but no, most of them just talk about how it's really old, runs away from fights, and likes to carry heavy packages. Between this and Pidgeot, it's really just a matter of aesthetics, and I'll tell you, I'll take my Javelin bird any day, despite the fact that I'm convinced they flipped the names in development. The Pokemon that causes fear is named Spearow, and the Pokemon that looks like a spear is named Miro.
What a shitty sword.
Finally, time for the big man himself. Charizard, no doubt a lot of people's first choice for a Pokemon partner. It's like how a lot of people say their favorite dinosaur is the T-Rex. Wrong, it's Ankylosaurus. He was a gangster who ankle broke those weak pack-hunting scavengers. Pikachu has shown itself to be a great partner. There's more than enough evidence to show that thanks to the several hundred episodes of the Pokemon documentary. Now with Pikachu, you basically get a designer pet, since it's not afraid to strut its stuff and cosplay depending on what you teach it. And
How much are you willing to buy this for?
to wear clothes,
This
Pikachu
stupid ass sword.
to die. Despite being a mouse Pokemon, it's
40
really not
bucks.
get that fat little body.
I'll take it.
Also, how's it
Or 40 yen, which is less than 40 bucks, I assure you. That's less than a buck.
Typing
In
can
fact.
be a bit of a negative though, since getting a shock when you hug it is a real possibility. However, it's never out of
I do want that gun.
Pikachus are just generally docile and aren't out to make trouble. The most they're going to do is scorch their berries when they want to eat and shock you a bit when they wake up because they're sleepy. Pikachu isn't a shocking pick for a good pet, but it's at least nice to read a series of dex entries that don't end with 2,000. Get to the cracked Alola. Now, your initial reaction to seeing someone own a Mr. Mime should be, I can't trust this person, and you'd be right because they most likely have very bad intentions, but that's not Mr. Mime's fault. Sure, his Gen 1 sprite looks like Curly from the Three Stooges was cursed by a sea witch to be trapped in gym equipment, but there's a lot more to like. First off, built-in entertainment value. He could do that. Second off is the fact that, unlike a lot of Pokemon, Mr. Mime has the capacity to be helpful. Regardless of whether or not you let him eat at the table, he's gonna help you with the dishes. The worst thing you can expect from Mr. Mime is
Ah, dang it, the ninth labyrinth's gonna be another shrine. I just remembered how boring.
And if you do think it's funny, he'll slap you. Dugong is a funny pick. Have you ever seen what a harp seal can do? Here's the answer. Not much. Seals already look like an animal that God had a personal grudge with, and Dugong certainly keeps that up. Its ferocious fangs and itty-bitty horn aren't exactly enough to kill anybody, while most of his dex entries just talk about how it enjoys swimming and how it likes to nap in warm weather to help it digest. While their name was maybe the laziest of all time, Dugong is an adorable pup. Finally, at 15 is Lapras, so you can probably guess that a whole Plesiosaurus is going to be hard to house, since it's not like it can come on land without awkwardly bouncing from place to place. That and getting food for it is really the worst thing you can mark against Lapras. I mean, look at it. It's dutifully carried people that it's never even met across oceans and enjoys human company. The only other problem you might run into is trying to get a permit to own a Pokemon as exotic and endangered as Lapras, but thanks to the repopulation efforts, you won't have to worry about it. This is thanks to the super heartwarming story of a kid who learned that Lapras was going extinct and began breeding and releasing them to try to stop them from dying out, and it worked! All the money you spend on Lapras, though, can be recouped if you open a fairy company. At least you know Lapras will enjoy it. The one Pokemon to score 16 points, it's Butterfree. Bugs are incredibly good for housing, since whether you want to believe it or not, you probably already have a few bug-type pets in your house right now. Flying-type doesn't mean you're going to want to keep it outside most of the time, especially given the fact that its main source of food is nectar. That bug typing I mentioned earlier isn't exactly a positive, however, since however many bugs you see, there are 20 more lurking around your house. You get a pet Butterfree, and suddenly you have a baker's dozen worth of pet Caterpie, which isn't exactly a bad pet in and of itself, and Metapod is basically a pet statue. Butterfrees are also incredibly well-behaved, only fighting when it's absolutely necessary, so it's unlikely to start biting my son if it accidentally tugs on its wings. If it does get into a fight, however, it has an ability to spread highly toxic dust, which is odd since it's not a poison type, but is still something to consider. It's really only the Kanto Dex that mentions how poisonous it is, however, so if you want to play it safe, you can always get a Johto Butterfree who is bound to be less toxic. As for feeding the thing, just set it loose on a flower patch and it'll feed itself. You just gotta watch out for its natural rival, as it's known to get into heated battles for territory with Cutiefly. Eat it, you say? Cutiefly is the size of a dime. How is it feuding with anything? 17 is home to a whopping 2 Pokemon, one of whom could fold the other one up and eat it for breakfast. Clefable may be the first ever Pokemon without a Dex entry having a single bad thing to say about it. Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, Alola, Galar, even Asui have nothing but glowing praise for it. If Alola's saying that you're docile and nervous, then you know that you're really no danger to anybody. The fairy typing also means that if the Stray Hydreigon comes to try and kill you, as it is wont to do, Clefable is able to pile drive it into the dirt. Barely edging it is Dragonite. This big guy may be the only dragon type in his generation, but that's really the only bad thing you have to say about it. The term friend-shaped was made for Dragonite. This thing couldn't hurt you unless it wanted to, in which case you would be smashed so hard you change star signs. When this dragon isn't demolishing people stupid enough to piss it off, it's helping shipwrecked boats. But this comes up so often in its Dex entries that it's safe to say this is just Dragonite's hobby. So much so that they've established a supposed island of just Dragonites to take care of shipwrecked sailors on to help them recuperate. While you may not find yourself getting into boat crashes regularly, it's always nice to have a guardian angel, or in this case, guardian dragon. 18 is here, and we are dangerously close to the really good pets. And there are only 4 Pokemon between us and the cream of the crop, as well as the cream of the crop, but we'll get to that. Alright, pop quiz hotshot. What bird is Pidgeot based on? You may have guessed that the smidgen of pigeon in the name would imply this brainless moron, but there isn't really a pigeon that's quite this pissed off. Pidgeot is more accurately an osprey or an eagle, which puts it in the bird of prey category. Now, that may be a big turnoff, since bird of prey doesn't exactly conjure warm, fuzzy feelings, but seeing as falcons, eagles, and hawks aren't the most uncommon pet in the world, it's not the worst type of bird to be. It's no parrot, but it's no ostrich either. Housing this thing is really more a matter of getting it somewhere to roost. It's way more flying than it's normal, so just give it a perch and it should be fine. That normal typing does come in handy, as it's a great pet type. You don't have to worry about it shorting out electrical sockets or freezing you to death. It's just a bird. A bird that will die for you. Pidgeots, when trained right, are ride or die Pokemon, as shown when Ash takes one on a Fearow and proceeds to fight it forever. Aside from that, Pidgeot does have a good track record with humans, seeing as tons of Dex entries talk about how popular of a Pokemon it is thanks to its plumage. It also excludes any talk about it murdering people. Pidgeot's company in this tier is Tangela. The tumbleweed with Jordans is just too wonderful for this world. He's pure grass, meaning that unlike every single other plant in Kanto, he's not either spewing poison or psychic waves. He's as basic as a grass type gets in this region. You're bound to have to help him get untangled from a bush every now and again, but that's far from the worst thing a Pokemon is asking you for help. Plus, if you're ever curious what your pet tastes like, freak, you're in luck, since you can pluck the vines off it with no damage inflicted to Tangela since they grow back within the day. It's just a wonderful little tumbleweed friend. We're finally here. 19 points, and 20 marks the best of the best that Pokemon have to offer in the realm of being a pet. Unfortunately, we're going right to those because we can't cover the Pokemon that scored a 19, since one of them is Jinx, and I don't care how many of you wouldn't, there are still just as many that would. The other Pokemon is Vaporeon, and I don't trust a single one of you to be adults about this. There are plenty of people who are completely oblivious as to why we're skipping it, and I advise you to keep it that way. The big 20 is here, and now we have the best of the best. The next 11 Pokemon are #1 in their field, and are what every trainer should hope to have.